Good evening. Work session of the July 25th City Council meeting is now underway. I have a request from Councilor Adam Campbell to participate remotely in the July 25th Staunton City Council meeting due to a personal matter that prevents his physical attendance at the meeting. Pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, I will now ask Councilor Campbell to state the personnel matter which makes him unable to attend tonight's meeting.
Good evening. It's Family Beach Week. We're in South Carolina at the beach.
I will now entertain a motion to allow Councilor Campbell's remote participation in this meeting pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3.
Mayor Claffey, pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3, I move to allow Councilor Campbell to remotely participate in the July 25th, 2024 Staunton City Council meeting due to a personal matter.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Arrowood. Mr. Kester, could you call the roll, please?
Miss Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Welcome, Councilor Campbell. We wish we could be there with you as opposed to the other way
Yeah.
around.
Thank you.
All right, can everyone in the audience hear him?
Yes.
Very good. The work session, we're going to start out with a consideration of work session regular meeting agendas. I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the work session and regular meeting agendas as presented.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Edwards. Mr. Kester, please call roll.
Miss Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. All right, that brings us to the first real item of business, which is a presentation of the 2024 community survey results.
I'm
Ms.
gonna,
Barger.
yeah, Amanda Kaufman, our Assistant City Manager, is going to present this item tonight, and it'll just be a presentation and any questions you have this evening.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. So we'll talk a little bit about a high-level overview of the community survey. You received the full packet of information in your materials, and it's daunting. It's 111 pages, so we will not go into extreme detail, but we'll give you a kind of a healthy overview. Kylie was extremely helpful in distilling this data with me and putting this presentation together, so he may chime in during this presentation. So start the slides. So the National Community Survey is a survey commonly utilized by governments across the United States. There's over 500 governments that use it annually. The measures are livability measures that look at both the habitability and the desirability of a community. So while we understand this is just one data set, we feel that the results from the survey can be paired with other community input that we receive to help inform decision-making. And so what sets NCS apart is that it is based on scientific survey methods. The common practice with community surveys is to perform them in alternating years and to basically establish trend data. So it's been about 20 years since we conducted a survey like this. So this is our baseline year. And when we conduct it again in 2026, we'll be able to start looking at that trend data. So the survey instrument is standardized, so participants can accurately compare with other communities and then against themselves in other years. So the survey instrument itself with all 161 questions is at the very back of your packet. It's the last 5 pages. The survey was sent to 3,000 randomly selected households, and that represents about 25% of our population, of our household population. 646 responses were received, and that reflects a 22% response rate, which our consultant said was a very, very good figure for this survey. So our data is compared to over 500 communities across the country who also conducted the survey this year. And so for each measure throughout the presentation and then throughout your materials, you will see how we compare against those benchmarks. The vast majority of our results were similar to our peers. So the last time we conducted a survey, as I mentioned earlier, was about 20 years ago in 2005 through the scientific method. In 2019, a community survey was conducted. It was distributed to all households and online. So there was good information from that, and I may mention a few key findings as a reference point, but we can't use that data to accurately inform trends because it was not a scientific study. So this year, again, was the established baseline. And then just a statement about limitations. While this methodology was designed to minimize error, as with any study, there are limitations. Some of those limitations can include, the respondents' actual direct experience or lack thereof with specific community services that were addressed in the survey, recall bias, social desirability bias, and even the time of year that it was conducted. And we conducted that at the very beginning of 2024. Early January is when it opened. So we're going to start off with talking about quality of life before we get into the facets of livability. And a key finding from NCS is that Staunton residents enjoy a very high quality of life. So as you can see, kind of a sampling of the measures here, Staunton has a place to live, your neighborhood has a place to live, a place to raise children, very positive scores. Anything that's in black, just as we go through the presentation, means that we are comparable to our peers. So we scored very similarly to the others that are participating in this survey. Staunton as a place to retire is green because we scored higher than our benchmark peers in that category, 79%. All right. So I think the easiest way to talk about the results, because there are so many measures and so much data here, is to use the quality and important matrix that you see here as a framework. So if you need to reference back to that at any point during this presentation, it's on page 9 of your materials. So here you see all 10 facets of livability that have been identified by NCS, and they're distributed in the quadrants based on how residents rated them in 2 different ways. One, what is the quality of that area? And then how important is that area to them? So the top right quadrant is high quality and high importance. And the bottom left quadrant would be low quality and lower importance. So we'll just kind of walk through the results at a high level by quadrant, just to kind of use this matrix as a framework. So we'll start off with safety, high quality, high importance. Staunton received excellent scores in this area. As you can see, residents feel safe downtown and in commercial areas, 98%. They feel safe in their neighborhood during the day, 96%. Safe from violent crime, 89%. And the overall feeling of safety in Staunton scored at 82%. So this data was not surprising to our police department, as they stay very tuned into satisfaction levels on a daily basis. So you may be aware of this, but the police department sends out a survey after each of their calls for service asking about their experience. So Chief Williams reported that about 90% of responses or more are positive, which is very consistent with these survey results. So those positive comments are shared with employees and negative comments are followed up on. So I think it's a really cool example of how one department is using data for continuous improvement. So moving on to the next area, which is also an area of high quality and high importance, is education, arts, and culture. So you can see the top 2 bullets are green because we scored higher than our benchmark peers in 2 areas, community support for the arts and opportunities to attend cultural, arts, and music activities. The public library service also had amazing scores at 90%. And so the library continues to see increasing numbers in its reach, as is represented in the activity reports each month. Both its circulation and patron traffic numbers are strong and rising. So an upcoming project the library is focusing on is a space needs assessment, looking at ways to effectively use the space they have to better meet community demand. So that'll be coming up later this fiscal year. All right, Parks and Recreation, again, it scored in the high quality, high importance quadrant. The park staff were happy with the survey results, and you can see some of the measures here shown on the screen. Quality of the parks at 85%, overall quality of Parks and Recreation as a whole, 83%. We scored similarly to our benchmark peers on all measures. Just one thing to note, that in year 2000, about 24 years ago, a master parks plan was done, which resulted in some expansions and improvements primarily to programming at that time. So Chris, the director of Parks and Rec, shared that it might be time to start to think about repeating a similar exercise to help anticipate and plan for future community parks and rec needs.
And none of the Parks and Rec scored a green. And
Yeah.
everybody raves about our parks.
So it's very difficult, I think, to score above or below a benchmark. For the
Yes.
most part, everything is going to be similar to the peers. For certain areas where we just really scored, if you look in the far back details at the end of the huge documentation pile I gave you, you can see the actual percentiles. And so there are other communities that are participating who also feel very strongly about their parks and recreation activities. So it's not to say that we aren't doing a great job. We are doing an excellent job, and we scored similarly to the others who are participating in the survey.
Very good.
Okay. So natural environment, we're moving over into a different quadrant here. It's rated still as high quality, but it has lower importance for respondents. So the city has indicated that environmental consciousness is a priority, and it appears on the Staunton plan as one of the strategic values. Environmental services staff felt good about the stormwater management score, you can see at the bottom, being similar to benchmarks, particularly given our location in a floodplain. So there have been several notable proactive projects that may have contributed to that score, including the flood sensors, the flood shields, and Gypsy Hill Park stream restoration project. Planning for and providing stormwater infrastructure and flood mitigation solutions appears as a strategic objective under infrastructure on the Staunton plan. And steps were recently made to provide for a more sustainable funding source for stormwater with the recent fee study and subsequent adoption of rate changes. Okay, so still in the high quality but lower importance quadrant is health and wellness. So the availability of affordable quality food and affordable quality healthcare have an impact on our residents' lives, as you can see in these measures on the screen. While several of the measures on the slide, I mean, they're all consistent with our benchmark peers. Some of the lower results are concerning. And so the healthcare figures that we see here are consistent with some of the preliminary data provided from our consultant who is conducting our regional needs assessment for the use of opioid funds. And that data has shown that Staunton has lower access to primary care providers than the state average. Access to affordable and quality housing also has an impact on health and wellness, but we're going to get into that in more detail later on. Okay, so moving into another quadrant here, a lower quality but higher importance, and that is utilities. So you can kind of see a little bit of mixed results on this slide. The majority of ratings for utilities were consistent with benchmarks. You can see good scores, sewer services, power, drinking water, garbage collection, the overall quality of utility infrastructure at 66%. It was also nice to see that even though it's not a city service, that the access to affordable high-speed internet scored better than our peers did, 68%. So utilities are a priority for the city and are also called out as a strategic priority under infrastructure in the Staunton plan. The funding gap to address the utility infrastructure needs is overwhelming and continues to grow. Staunton has made some recent progress on creating a more sustainable funding source with the adjustment of water and sewer rates that had not been evaluated for many years. So you'll see at the bottom, the recycling number is in red, and that means that we scored lower than our benchmarks in this area. So that was something that was not a surprise due to the recent elimination of curbside recycling. We anticipated that number to rank lower. However, the usage figures from recycling center show that it has been very well utilized since it moved out to Public Works about a year ago.
Ms. Kaufman, was there anywhere in the data that showed that the folks who said they were dissatisfied with recycling were people who did use the recycling center, or they just don't use it and they're dissatisfied?
We did not have that data.
Yeah.
It was not part of this.
Okay.
But we do have tools to do additional surveying if we want to do spot surveys
Yeah.
for certain users.
All right. Thanks.
So based on So based on the tonnage collected at the recycling center, Dave, our Director of Public Works, estimated about a 3% diversion rate from the landfill. And so that does have a positive impact on Stanton's expected share of the landfill life. And while he doesn't have that calculation ready for what that figure is, he does believe it's material. So that is really good news about how our recycling center is being utilized. With more publicity of the center and if utilization continues to increase, we may see a slight improvement in this figure in 2026 when we repeat the survey.
But even with curbside recycling, we didn't enjoy any higher numbers, do we?
We didn't do this survey while we had curbside recycling.
But I'd heard it was always less than 4%. So it's still the same thing. All right.
Okay, so moving on to the economy. This area was rated as high importance, but lower quality. First, want to talk about those first two measures that you see that are in green. Those are kind of indicators of tourism, I'd say. Stanton is a place to visit, 85%. The vibrancy of downtown and commercial area, 71%. Very happy to have a response that exceeds those of our benchmark peers. The remaining measures are all consistent with what our peers scored on their survey, but some of them are concerning. And so a few to just note, 23% of respondents stated the economy, only 23% of respondents stated the economy would have a positive impact on their family's income within the next 6 months. Only 35% reported access to affordable and quality childcare, and then access to affordable quality housing scored at only 21%. So in referring back to the data from the 2019 survey that I mentioned earlier, 58% of the respondents at that time felt positively about the affordability of quality housing. So this figure has changed drastically over those 5 years and post-pandemic, and so that is a concerning figure. Prioritizing affordable housing and housing for working families is specifically called out as a strategic priority in your Staunton plan under economic development. The city hired a housing planner last year who you'll hear from shortly. And then we anticipate the need for attainable and affordable housing is going to be kind of an important piece to consider during the formation of the updated comprehensive plan that's coming up. And then lastly, in discussions with Amanda, Director of Economic Development, she has indicated that housing is one of the areas of highest importance when she's talking with business prospects that are coming to look for location or expansion in Staunton. So economy is a huge area of importance for the city and for our services. And yep, well, that's about it for that slide. Okay, inclusivity and engagement is the next facet of livability covered in this. Can you flip it? Or am I in the wrong spot?
Yeah, I think this one's next.
Community design.
All right, I flipped it. Community design. So this also scored in the lower quality, low importance quadrant. So we scored higher than benchmarks for one of our measures. As you can see, preservation of historical and cultural character at 77% exceeded our peers. Other areas, your neighborhood is a place to live. The overall appearance of Staunton also scored very well at 80% each. In discussions with our community development director, Rodney, he believes this data will be another helpful source to inform the upcoming comp plan, as we've discussed a couple times now. Other departments are looking forward to this process as community design and growth are very impactful in a lot of local government services. Right. All right, and now inclusivity and engagement. This also scored in the lower quality, lower importance quadrant. So these are both areas of strategic importance to the city. Inclusion and equity and engagement are both strategic values called out in the Staunton plan. So in looking at this data, a few things happened right around the time this survey went out that we believe will positively impact the data in 2026. So in December, right before this survey went live, the DEI Commission presented its findings to you all from their work over the prior 18 months. Council then supported the creation of a permanent DEI commission to continue its work and to make progress on implementation of some of those recommendations. Secondly, we also welcomed a new key staff member, Josh, our communications and engagement manager, while the survey window was open. He's already made strides in increasing the city's visibility, engagement efforts, and public outreach. Okay, and so lastly, mobility and transportation is our 10th facet of livability. And this was an interesting one from the survey results. So one of the key findings from NCS was that we had very strong ratings for our street conditions and for our ease of travel for vehicular users. But at the same time, it showed us areas for improvement in alternative transportation methods. So you can see we scored above the benchmark on the traffic flow on major streets, and that's green, 72%. Ease of travel by car is high at 82%. But you're also going to see two red measures at the bottom, and that's ease of travel by bicycle and the availability of pass and walking trails. So along with recycling, these three are the only ones that we scored below benchmarks on, which, we're happy that it was only 3. These results were not surprising to staff. We have been aware that this is a community need, and a focus on creating walkable places is also specifically called out as a strategic priority under infrastructure in the Staunton plan. So over the last several years, there have been a few other sources that have provided us with some data on the need for better bike and ped, and that is one, the 2019 survey results, ranked transportation by vehicle high and by bicycle and pedestrian paths low. Staunton's Bike Ped Committee, BPAC, created a plan to address some of these gaps back in 2018 and have been working on that for the past several years. There's some exciting projects on the horizon on West Beverly and Churchville. And then input received through various planning processes, most recently the West End Revitalization Plan. Residents have told us that connectivity and walkability is very important. So again, referring back to the comp plan update on the horizon, this will serve as valuable data to use to source that information, one source to inform that work. And then Rodney is also looking forward to updating the bike and pedestrian plan concurrent with the comp plan. So that is on the horizon as well. All right, so there's a lot of information to digest. There's a couple steps, kind of next steps. We're going to continue talking about this data with our management team at a future retreat, dig a little deeper into that. We have a contract with Polko, which allows us to do kind of open or focused surveys, non-scientific, unlimited, if we want to dig a little bit deeper into any particular service area. So that's just another great tool to have in our toolbox. And then this could be a resource to help with the development of the budget, or may assist council when you look back at the Staunton plan again during your retreat in early 2025. So do you have any questions for me?
I have one about the bicycle. I mean, it seems like council has approved everything that has come to council on the bike plan, and we always are, yay, let's go, let's do it. I'm not aware of anything the council has ever voted against as far as bicycle paths. I know that the plan was 2018, and we're always saying, yes, let's go, let's do it. So why is it 2024? And we're getting a 31, which is the worst grade we got on the whole thing. And we don't see a single bike path in the entire city. And yet everything that goes back to 2018, as far as council is concerned, is a go.
Well, we do have a few projects on the horizon, and Rodney's here. He can talk more to those if he'd like, but the West Beverly project, and then on Churchville as well. Additionally, updating the BPAC updating the bike ped plan is going to hopefully be.
But what does council need to do to get that going?
Rodney, do you want to address this?
But haven't we done everything?
I think some of it is funding. I mean, it was just a few years ago that we started putting money in a reserve for bike and ped improvements. So that's fairly recent, and Mr. Rhodes is coming to the podium. So I think some of it, you're right, Mayor, you all have done everything you to do. I think it's money and it's timing and some of it's VDOT, but I'm going to let Mr. Rhodes kind of address this.
Yes, I just repeat what Leslie and Amanda stated. A lot of these projects, they've all been supported wholeheartedly by City Council, but most of these projects require outside funding. And most of those are through VDOT funding, and it's a long process to get that funding, to get it designed and then constructed. But we have half a dozen projects, VDOT projects that are in the works, and a couple sidewalk projects also in the works. But it's a long time coming. I can appreciate city council's frustration. I hear it from the citizens. We hear it in the survey. I'm frustrated by it. But we do have some things, including the West Beverly project that is going to start September 3rd-ish. With the first part of that will be a sidewalk, 600 feet of sidewalk that's being constructed where there is none now across from the soon-to-be J&DR Court. But that project will also include bicycle infrastructure and bicycle lanes when the paving is done as part of that project.
Well, what about that deal we went through on Churchill Avenue to the city line?
Yes, sir.
Is that 100% dependent on VDOT?
No, sir.
That local?
That will be local. And unfortunately, it's been very difficult to get paving contractors. This is mostly a paving and striping project, and they just have so much work that this is a relatively small project that they're not interested in bidding on. We're hopeful that maybe the contractor that has been selected for the West Beverly project will be willing to also, while they're here in town, to do that project also.
Ms. Bogart, is there money set aside to pay for that?
We put money aside for that, yes, sir. And
How much? And what are we waiting to spend?
Okay. City council has been putting aside
Can't remember.
$125,000 per year in the CIP for a handful of years. So we do have significant money raised up. It's amazing how much stuff costs though. And we've utilized some of that for, to have the engineer design that. And we brought that before you for your
Right.
review.
Right.
Now it's just a point of getting a contractor to actually do the work.
Rodney, and a number of these projects for bicycle infrastructure are paint only. Are they not? I mean, striping out a bike lane for roads that are wide enough. Now, does that typically involve a resurfacing or?
No, but it's usually the same contractor that, that does paving and striping, that kind of goes hand in hand. You're correct. Ideally, you do the bicycle infrastructure when you have a paving project. So you're not trying to remove existing, paint, and then put down new paint to show the bike lanes and all. We are at this point just trying to utilize existing road surface, from curb to curb. We're not looking to take additional right of way, go into people's yards. So we're trying to repurpose existing pavement for bicycle infrastructure where it is possible.
Lane where possible, sharrows
Yes.
where not,
Yes.
things like that. Okay.
I don't mind, council. The other thing you all did during the last budget cycle was add a position for the city engineer, which will also help push some of these, the projects, even the ones that are VDOT managed, require city staff time. And so if we can get that position hired, which has been difficult, then that would actually help maybe push some of these faster as well. So we are moving forward, but you're right, Mayor, it just takes a while.
And Ms. Rhodes,
I have a question.
I'm sorry. you
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Um,
Mine's for Amanda.
I used to walk my dog quite a bit up at Montgomery Hill Park back there with all the trails, and they're frequently whizzed by with mountain bikes. I mean, is that an official mountain bike trail there that can be more, communicated to the community that there are paths, or is that more of an informal usage? It's informal.
Those are paths within a city park, so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
they're open to everyone in the public. It's my
that
understanding
people
that,
don't know about it, yeah.
Interesting comment on that. At the
Mhm.
EDA meeting this morning,
Mhm.
that very fact was
Oh
brought
my
up,
gosh,
that the Montgomery Hall Paths are magnificent
yeah. we
and
use it
and
there.
totally underutilized and nobody knows about them. So maybe we ought to get Josh Knight
Mhm.
working
Yeah.
on publicizing them, because that's the second time I've heard that in 2 meetings today.
Yeah, many
That's
many
interesting
years
point.
ago, the Planning Commission was looking at a perimeter trail of Montgomery,
Yeah.
but the grade is just too difficult. You'd have to have switchback after switchback for that. But that stirred up the kingdom of the mountain bikers. You know, they're saying, "Are you about to put a path over our paths?" And so it's a big group of people that use it, but they're not official city paths. I don't think any of that back
They
there.
say there's 3 marked trails that are.
Yeah, I mean, they mark them too. So I don't know. Maybe it's almost
Oh,
a
yeah, they
cooperation
are.
at this point.
Getting
That was a
pretty
while
close.
back.
It is a cooperation with Parks and
Yeah.
Rec. They are park trails. This mountain bike group, they're maintaining those.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
so it's
entirely
not city
them. It's
funds that
great.
are,
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there are places to bike.
It's nice
Well,
and
good.
shady in the trees. It's wonderful.
Well, whatever you
I-
can do to get it going.
Yeah. I have a quick question for Amanda.
With.
You mentioned that, okay, there was a non-scientific study like this done in 2019. But then the one prior to that was like, what, 20 years, did you say?
About
Previous?
2005 is what I
Is it-
found in the records.
I mean, any idea why there was such a lapse in time?
I mean, we don't have
Idea.
we don't have the tenure to really speak to that, but
The one in 2019 was done in partnership with Mary Baldwin University.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that? Yeah, they did a presentation. That was about when I arrived here, so I do
Right.
remember that. And Ruth Jones Turner was helped coordinate that since she was in the city manager's office. We have no idea why the lapse in between, but our intent, as Ms. Kaufman said, is every other year.
That's good.
Next, so in 2 years, we'll have trend data, and we did this in Charlottesville, and by the time I had left, we had maybe 5 years of trend data, and it was pretty powerful. We used the same tool in Charlottesville, so.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Thank
Well,
you.
good to see you. Counselor Campbell, do you have anything that you want to add?
Yeah, just a question for Ms. Kaufman. Thanks for the update. Are we gonna make this summary presentation available on the city website?
yes, it was part of the council packets, which was posted online. And then we also have a page for it that lives in the city manager's office section on our website. So this presentation that I provided today, the full 111 pages, and then Morgan is working on an infographic, kind of a survey in brief document to also provide to the public on that spot.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. This is
Yeah,
very
thank you very
informative.
much.
This is a great report.
Thanks.
Brings us to an update on modernizing city refuse collection. Ms. Beauregard.
I'd like to introduce your new Public Works Director, Mr. David Irvin. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
His
Leslie.
honeymoon is officially over, starting right now. But
Welcome.
he is here this evening. Okay, we are back on track with this and we're excited. So we have been talking and meeting, and Mr. Irvin is going to provide an update and where we're going from here and answer any questions you have. So.
Mayor Claffey.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Claffey, council. And I don't have any PowerPoint presentations or handouts at this time, maybe at another presentation in the future. But as you know, the city embarked on a trash modernization program well over a year ago. It's been a long time. Unfortunately, at Public Works, we underwent some fairly significant and numerous personnel changes at the beginning of the calendar year. So the program stalled. About approximately 2 months ago, we formed what I like to call a trash committee within Public Works to restart this program. We meet mostly on a weekly basis to keep this thing, to gain the momentum and keep this thing moving forward. It started with a review of where we were, and we were a little dismayed at what we initially discovered, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But our view is that there are 5 critical components to this program. 3 are physical and 2 are administrative. The 3 physical components are the cans, obviously, the tippers that we need to install on the back of the trash trucks, and then the software and / hardware that accompanies that. The 2 administrative tasks are a new revised policy, as well as the communication component for this to roll out the program. So when we initially reviewed where we left off, we had some dismay that the physical components, it looked as though only one vendor for each of those. The tippers, the cans, and the software had been approached, and costs were being based on just one vendor. We felt like a higher level of due diligence would be prudent to do that. So that's where we started. We reached out to other vendors. It's not just a one game thing, not just, one company out there that does this type of work. So that's exactly what we did. And it was productive in the sense that we have found and I'll just use the cans as an example. All right, so the initial vendor, cans were made in Mexico, a 12-year warranty, and lots of other folks used them. But we found a similar company, similar warranty, almost the exact same can. The program was offering a 96-gallon can and a 48-gallon can. There's a slight difference in the can sizes. This other company, it's made in Charlotte, North Carolina, a better product. In fact, New York City just purchased 1.2 million of the, it's called Otto. It's not, it's OTTO cans. And and they're cheaper. So as we move forward, we feel like the auto cans will result in a savings for the city.
Do they have a 64?
Do they have a what?
A middle option in sizes?
They do, but in our trash committee meeting, we met about it. We also went and talked to some other folks who went through the growing pains of a trash modernization program. The most beneficial information we received from City of Harrisonburg. And mid-size cans, staff recommends against it. I'll illustrate what happened illustrate that with what happened with the City of Harrisonburg. They offered only the 2-size cans. But now in their stockyard, they have over 350 48-gallon toter cans. What they found was that once it got down to the actual can selection, a lot of folks didn't want the small cans. And the ones where that initially did want the small cans changed their mind and said, no, this isn't big enough. We want the larger can. So they are stuck with 350 48-gallon cans that they have no use for. We considered the mid-size can. Tracking can be an issue with that. Not difficult, but as far as people switching out the smaller cans with larger cans, which is the precedent has been set by Harrisonburg, the folks, they went through those pains. And a large percent, I don't have the exact number, but a large percent of the City of Harrisonburg residents have opted ultimately for the large can. So the other ultimate component is the tippers. Again, there was only one vendor approach. We found a different vendor that will ultimately provide some savings for the city for the tippers. We've actually ordered 2 brand new refuse trucks that will be automatically outfitted with the tippers. The bad news there is that as with any piece of large, heavy equipment these days, is the delivery time. The delivery time on the 2 refuse trucks that we have ordered is somewhere between 18 and 24 months. That's too long. So we are faced with, we are going to have to retrofit our existing refuse trucks with the appropriate tippers. But having found a vendor that can do that for us in a very timely manner and at a cheaper rate than the original vendor, we feel like that's the way to go. The third physical component is the software/hardware. Initially, in the initial program, it was a company called Rubicon. And after researching several other vendors, we agree that that is the best way to go. So our intent is to go with the Rubicon. It does a lot of different things. It can help you improve routes. There's an accountability portion with it. If things have to be rerouted, you can do that. All of the trash cans will be equipped with RFIDs, tags in the cans that will be assigned serial numbers and addresses. That's all tracked by Rubicon in the software. So moving on to the two administrative components, I mentioned the policy. What we had discovered is that virtually no work had been done on upgrading the city's policy, which is currently based on curbside or the status quo, what's happening now. So we're going to have to rewrite this policy. We are currently on draft number 5 within our trash committee, work in progress, but it's coming along quite well. And then the last component, again, I'm very thankful that Josh has been working with us. We have to communicate this out there. A big factor in the cost of this program is the actual cost of the can. There is a difference between the small can price and the large can price. So the initial Trash Talk survey that was done back then showed that 22% of the folks wanted the small can, 78% wanted the large can. But if we're using Harrisonburg as an example, those percentages aren't even close. So we're anticipating that a lot of these folks are going to want the larger can. That's where the software, the Rubicon, will help us track this. We already have a large list of folks with their preferences selected. But that survey only reached, and I don't know the amount, 15, 18% of the folks. We got 10,000 customers out there. If we're going to be making a major purchase on based on can size, we really need to nail this down better than it is. So we have some ideas and thoughts, and working with Josh on that we're going to attempt to have community meetings at several key locations, Gypsy Hill Park, Montgomery Hall Park, maybe the library, and invite folks to come. And it's now or never. Now's the time you select your can. We'll put this information into the Rubicon. That'll help refine what the actual cost of the cans will be. And so the communication part of that is going to be key. Get this word out that it's time to select a can. And then there's the communication part as far as the implementation of the plan. This isn't going to happen overnight. Again, 10,000 customers, everyone's going to want their can and they're going to want it now. But that's so the way this works is the cans come in and we have a place at Public Works where we will call it the assembly area, because there is, like anything you buy that's under the Christmas tree, some assembly is required. So now they will be doing the assembly part for us. So, but it comes in on flatbed trailers. They'll have a crew here. They'll assemble the cans. It'll go back on the flatbed truck and then be delivered house by house to each of the citizens. So our intent is to go by our regular trash routes. We'll start with Monday's route and deliver cans, and then we'll go to Tuesday's route and deliver cans. And it may take a little bit of time to actually get these cans distributed. So there will be sort of a waiting period. And we anticipate getting the calls, where's my can? And as long as everyone can be patient, we will get them their can. And that's kind of where we are. We're meeting on a regular basis, not just our trash committee up at Public Works, but then we have the periodic meetings where to brief city manager's office. And I'll entertain any questions that you all may have.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Servant, it's good to have you with us. Thank you for all your work on this so far, along with your committee. I see Mr. Lambert in the back there. So
Yes, Mr. Lambert is, I mentioned a variety of personnel changes at Public Works. Very happy to have our new refuse and facility superintendent, Chris Lambert Jr. He's been instrumental in this and many other things.
good.
Congratulations.
Do you have any anticipated time frame as far as when the policy and the procedure will be available for council to be briefed on?
Excellent question. And the answer is no at this point. I mentioned draft number 5. We keep tweaking this. We want to get it to where we are comfortable with it before we present it to you all. And we're not quite at that point, so I do not have an estimated time, but soon.
Dave, I got a call from a friend of mine that says, how many more times do I have to duct tape my trash can together? He says, I'm ready to buy a new one. And I said, they're coming. Do you have any clue as to how much longer he has to keep duct taping?
That's a common question. We get those phone calls as well. I mean, my existing can is on its last legs. Do I need to go buy one? Again, we've made a few visits to the city of Harrisonburg. And the rollout, no pun intended, of their program took some time. And we were optimistic, thinking by the end of this year. They were pessimistic, basically saying that's not going to happen. So the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. I would anticipate our goal is to try to begin rolling out cans after the holidays in December.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
The important part of that is since this is ARPA money, we will need to know what we are buying and have it all encumbered
spent.
by the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
Not spent, encumbered. We have 2 years to
Yes.
spend the money.
Okay.
So all that decisions will be made by the end of the calendar year, but if you're talking about actually physical cans going out, yeah, it'll be after that.
The good
Yeah.
news, I mentioned the 3 physical components. All right, so the software, we're not waiting. We have a meeting on Wednesday with the Rubicon folks. They're actually going to come down and we're going to set up a pilot program. They're basically going to start installing some of the software so we can start to learn it, start to use it to get ahead of the game. On the tipper side, we're ready to order the tippers to get those retrofitted. The time it takes for that, they're going to have to, because we have to keep these trucks rolling as is, we're going to have to do them one at a time. But the anticipated time for that, or actual work time to get that done is maybe 6 weeks. And then as far as the cans themselves, once we place the order, the lead time on that is also in the 6 to 8 week timeframe.
Any other questions from counselors? Adam? No. Well, thank you for this update.
Thank you.
We've been anxiously awaiting and we welcome you to your new position.
Yeah,
Glad to have you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to our next item, which is an update on Staunton's pathway to affordable housing and housing for working families. City of Staunton Housing Strategy proposed scope of work.
Well, those
Ms.
first 2 reports are so great. I think this next one's going to be great too.
All right.
So Ms. Joyce is here again. She's been coming to you on a regular basis since she started last year, I guess. So she's done a lot of amazing work during that time. So she's going to provide an update and some proposals that you'll have to think about.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you all. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I just wanted to update you on where we are in our next step on that path to affordable housing. What we would like to do next, and you all received a copy with your packet of the scope of work for our housing strategy. Many communities across the United States have housing strategies, and what it really is a framework that kind of describes the approach that the city plans to take to reach its housing objectives. So I just want to talk to you all a little bit about that tonight. Okay, just as I always mention, the need for housing in affordable housing and workforce housing is part of the Staunton plan under the economic development strategy. Okay, so want to talk to you all about why we want to do the housing strategy. It's going to help us move forward in our goal to get more housing here and the right housing for our region. As I just mentioned before, the housing strategy is a framework that kind of describes that approach that we're going to take to reach those housing objectives. Some of the things that we will be doing, the first is analyzing data. I know many of you all went to the SAW Housing Consortium meeting that they had in June and got to see some of the early statistics from the regional housing study. The housing study, from what I understand this week, is supposed to be out on the street no later than August 16th. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. That will give us a lot of good information to start out with. We can supplement that with some of the census and American Community Survey data, but doing this strategy right now with all that good regional data that the consultants provided in the study is going to be very helpful. We're also going to conduct, as part of this strategy, a capability and capacity assessment. And that's really looking at what can we do, what ability do we have to do it, and what kinds of things can we do. We're also going to provide opportunities for stakeholder and community member engagement, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We're going to create housing policies and start to define those. We're going to look at funding sources, the current housing partners we have and potential ones that are out there. And then the biggest and most important part of the strategy is an action plan. And that will include what those strategies are, a timeline, who will be working on those, which organizations, and we have a lot of wonderful ones in the region that are working on housing. Who of those work with us and what can we do to help them? What funding requirements there are for different kinds of activities, and then some milestones. This is going to be a bare bones planning process. This is a foundation to build on over time. We want to look at what can we do now? What things are we already doing now that people may not be aware of? And what's the low-hanging fruit, as they say, out there that we can grab? This process will be an 8-month planning process. We'll start it in September and it'll be wrapped up in April. So these are the main activities that we'll be doing, and everything's spelled out in the scope of work that you all have in much more detail. But we'll have a work group. It'll be comprised of members across the housing areas. The city manager will appoint those. We will have 4 meetings strategically throughout those 8 months, and they'll assist with their expertise and knowledge in those different housing areas to help develop that strategy document. We're also going to have community engagement, and I think that's really important with housing because there's a lot of things that are misunderstood about housing, a lot of needs that we may not realize are out there. It's a very volatile situation as far as how things are changing very quickly, both in rental issues and with homeownership. But we're going to have some in-person and virtual input sessions. We'll do a very short survey, online and paper, for people to be able to provide input that way if they'd like. I'd like to do what I'm calling a Housing 101 presentation at the library for community members to give everybody, not that I'm the expert at all, but a little basic understanding of the different things about housing that we don't all know about. I know I learn something new every day. Housing just is changing very rapidly. And then we'll also be available to give presentations to civic groups and organizations. A lot of times, civic groups are looking for somebody to give a 10 or 15-minute presentation. So we'll be glad to do that just to get people more aware of the housing that's going on in the city, what the city can do, and what the other organizations are doing. We'll also create a strategy document, and that will kind of put all that information in one place. A lot of times with plans, they end up a lot of paper in a big notebook that goes on a shelf. This will be a little bit of paper with a little notebook that will be sitting on our desks, and we'll be able to use it to move forward. The next step will be then to look at the strategies that we have, which ones can we implement now, and we're going to set goals, immediate goals, which will be what can we start doing now in a 3-month period, medium kind of goals that we can do in a 6-month period, and then long-term goals, which aren't very long, an 18-month period. In about a year after we complete the strategy, we can review it and move on to the next step to go to some of those more complex housing issues. What can be done? How can we do those? So those are kind of what the steps are, the activities we'll have in the strategy. And then this is just a reminder, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. This is what we're providing with the strategy, is the foundation, the framing of the house. We won't have the siding up. There won't have a chimney. There won't be a front door yet. This is just to get us started and start building consensus in the community about what those housing needs really are. So any questions? Comments?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Joyce. This is
Sure.
great. I really
Sure.
enjoyed reading it. I'm sure you put in a lot of time and learned a lot as well, and I did as well.
Yes, there's a lot of good information out there I just happened upon about developing the community strategy. So I'm very excited
Good.
to do this and then get moving.
I have two quick questions.
Sure.
Will you be the one that goes out into the community if a civic group wants to
Sure.
have the one?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I've,
Sure.
I've done that in a former life many times, and you get a lot of free lunches and dinners.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, there's
I
a
won't
bonus
mind doing
there.
that.
There's
Yes.
a plus there.
Yes.
Larry. 56, you just forget these things right away.
Wanted to interchange.
Go right.
Okay, okay, okay.
I'm gonna write it down. when it
Yeah,
gets
I know. Part of me, in all this process wants to jump up and down and say, how about now, now, now? I understand it takes a lot of planning to do these things right.
Yes.
And I've stopped in and talked with you along the way
Yes.
a little bit as well. And I'm very glad with how thorough you're being with it, how many different parts of the community and the housing community you're trying to touch and get input from as
Good.
part of this. And I'm excited about seeing this move forward. So
Yes.
thank you, Rebecca.
And I did want to mention, I did not mention two things. The next step beside the implementation will be to see about moving forward with a housing commission and what that structure will look like and what they will do. So I don't want to forget to mention that. And then also this housing strategy is also going to be at a very good time to be kind of a little bit simultaneously with the update of the comprehensive plan. So we will include that as an annex or appendix in the back of the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And there will also be a very good housing section in the comprehensive plan as well. So, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Ms. Joyce,
Yes.
just, I want to thank you for the presentation. I think your scope of work is thorough and looks great. My question, as you just said, there's a lot going on right now with the regional SAL housing group, the upcoming regional housing study from the CSPDC, our update to the comprehensive plan. Maybe not to put you on the spot here, but maybe I'd like to see something added to the scope of work of how all of these processes are going to align with each other. I just want to make sure we're not duplicating work or resources, that we're taking advantage of all the other studies in this realm or plan updates that are happening right now, just to make sure all of these align appropriately.
Well, you're not putting me on the spot. That's a very good question. As far as the SAL Housing Consortium, I know in September they will begin. They're having their first meeting to organize the work groups for that, and I have agreed to be on the and I'm not giving you the exact title, but the Housing Home Ownership Committee and the Housing Rental Committee. So I'll be involved in that and what's going on with that. And then as far as the regional housing study, we will be incorporating some of that information just for Staunton into this study. And then we are very active in participating in some of the other different housing groups. CAPSAL has a monthly housing call. I sit on that. The Valley Community Service Board has a consortium of care for dealing with people who are homeless, and we're a part of that. So we're pretty enmeshed in the community housing groups as it is. So I don't want us to do anything duplicative. The real goal here is to say, this is what the city does now. This is what we can do. This is what we don't do, and this is what we can't do. So that way, there's not expectations for things that are not what we do, but then people are aware of what we do. And then we have a lot of partnerships already. That I think is just going to make the ability for housing to go better.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Any other questions from counselors?
Thank
Ms.
you.
Beauregard, anything else?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Joyce. We appreciate the update.
Sure.
All right, that brings us to a closed meeting for the discussion of performance of the city attorney pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1. I will now entertain a motion.
Fine. I move to enter closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel for discussion of the performance of the city attorney pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Darby. Mr. Kessinger.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, we're now in closed session until 6:59. We'll come back and get ready for the regular meeting. Thank you. All right, I have 6:59. Can we come out of the closed meeting, please?
All right, fine. Mr. Mayor, I move the council reconvene in an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawfully exempted public business matters were discussed and that only public business matters as identified in the closed meeting motion were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Counselor Edwards. Mr. Kessinger, please call the roll.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And now the meeting is called to order. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And tonight's invocation moment of silence is going to be brought to us by Mark Robertson. So without further ado, can we please pray for the quick recovery of our missing counselors? We're missing two counselors tonight, Mark Robertson and Alice Woods, both having some medical issues, and I hope that they have a quick recovery, and we're all going to pray for them. So keep them in your prayers.
Amen.
Also want everybody to pray for travelers and vacationers. We have Counselor Campbell at the beach, and there's a lot of cars on the road. Let me tell you, I'm well aware of it. I know the vice mayor just got back from a 5,000-mile trip. Since Monday, I've driven to Maine and back, and that's 1,500 miles, and that's a long haul. So please pray for everybody that's out there on the road. It's a lot of cars out there, that's for sure. And finally, let's pray for our city to overcome the persistent drought that we are experiencing. 4 years ago during this very month, we were inundated with floods. So think about it. It's always something, but there's good reason to pray for our city. So keep that in mind. And that brings us to the mayor's report. It has been 28 days since our last meeting. Our last meeting was June 27th. And since that time, we have enjoyed a delightful 4th of July. I want to thank Happy Birthday America and Will and Langdon Reed for all the work they did to put on a absolutely fabulous 4th of July celebration. Made you proud to be in Staunton. It was the biggest parade I have seen in a long time. There were 160 entries that went on for over 2 hours in the park. We were number 9, and we were all the way around the park and back out of it, and there were still 40 more vehicles coming into the park. So that tells you exactly how extensive the parade route was. It was all of council members were present that night. At least we did show up for a parade, you know, but it was a great time. And Ms. Bogart, we were in a truck, and I did take pictures of the rust on the truck because everybody else had really nice trucks and vehicles. And the city council was there in a rusty old white truck.
That was a working truck.
That was a
Yeah, it
definitely
wasn't
working
a powder
truck.
puff.
And I just want to give Ms. Bogart a hard time because the county commissioners were in this real nice air-conditioned vehicle right behind us. And we were balanced on the hay bales on this really old
was fun,
rusty
Steve.
truck. But
It was having
So-
a great time.
we did have an
Truck
excellent
was
time.
rusty? Did you say it was rusty?
I have pictures.
Oh,
I'll
okay,
take.
good. Okay, just making sure I heard that. Okay.
We had an excellent time. Also, since July 4th, I attended the Tourism Advisory Board meeting on July 11th. And they were anxiously awaiting the new visitor guide, which I got this morning, and every member of council should have gotten them, and they just arrived. This came out of the first box, and this is scheduled to last 2 years. And what we got, 50,000 of them. So anybody that's going to ask for a visitor guide is going to get this, and it's an outstanding job. And I took it home and I read it, and I'm most impressed. So thanks to all the crew at the city that have been working on it. And it's a very impressive work. And then in addition to that, they also got the rack cards that they'll put at all the interstates, to invite everybody to come to Stanton. And it has one of those what are those things called? The things you shoot with your phone to
QR code.
Oh, yeah.
QR code, the scan code. So there's a bunch of them coming out as well that they're going to be putting up and down the interstate. So quite impressive. Don't forget the Mischief and Magic is coming the late September. And they, at the Tourism Advisory Board, were saying they're putting the advertising together now. And if you want to be in that ad, contact Sarah at Baja now, because that will be published next month. So let's see, also on July 11th, I attended the Presbyterian Joint Picnic at Jazz in the Park. And there was Mark Robertson covered me for the 100th anniversary party for the Stonewall Hotel 24 anniversary. So he went and presented them a proclamation. This morning, I attended an EDA meeting, and it was the first meeting that we had Amanda DeMeo running, and it was excellent. We got a lot of good information this morning. And the last thing I have to mention is going in August, we will be back to having 2 meetings a month, so it won't be as long in between, and we'll get things back to running. So we'll be meeting on August 8th and August 22nd in August. So how about other members of council? Do we have any additional items?
Just a couple things, Mr. Mayor. Just want to let everyone know that school is going to be starting again August 2nd, or August 7th. So please watch out for the buses and the walkers and the bikers. Kids are going back to school. Just a brief library update. Ms. Kaufman mentioned the increased circulation, increased foot traffic, increased attendance at special events at the library, including Spider-Man Storytime, where there were over 100 attendees. There is cool new furniture in the juvenile and young adult section of the library. So if you're a frequenter of our library, go by that section and you'll see it. It looks very, very nice. Digital materials continue to grow. Over last year, there was a 34% increase in the use of digital materials over physical books, things that you would take home. And overall, visits continue to go up. There were about 160 new library cards issued in June of 2024. So our library continues to just be a great community place, very well utilized.
Great library.
Amen.
Well, let's see, I did a good deal of traveling with my family in the breaks since we've been gone. As I said, when you go somewhere with small children, it isn't always a vacation. It's more of a trip. But I did get a chance to help out with Fairview Cemetery. They're trying to, it's a historic Black cemetery. It's near the post office there. They see the little house there, the Shea House. They're trying to gather funds to restore that. There's a fund that's managed by the Community Foundation that was able to help set up for that. And this last couple of weeks ago, I was able to help with getting some aerial photography as part of pursuing grants for that as well.
Very good.
Too, so because the grounds need some restoration as well as the buildings there and some of the headstones. There are a lot of volunteers helping out writing stones and all of that. So it's kind of one of the little known gems of the city, in there too. So it's good to see action happening on that. And then not this Saturday, but next Saturday is the NAACP Freedom Banquet. I believe they still have tickets if anyone's interested in going to that. Reach out on that. So that's all I have.
Very good.
Good to be home.
It's good to have you back. Counselor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Claffey. I'll just share that I know many of you and staff attended the Saul Housing Summit last month. I was unavailable for that, but Councilwoman Woods and I attended the Lunch and Learn they had just a few weeks ago. So got to get some more information on the upcoming regional study and looking forward to the action group that's going to focus on some actual things we can do to help the situation starting up in September. I also attended the 100-year anniversary event of the Hotel 24 South building, and Councilman Robertson did a fantastic job with the proclamation. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, let's move into the regular meeting. We're going to start with the consent agenda. All items will be voted on in one motion. If any members of council wants to remove an item from the consent agenda, please do so at this time.
Mayor Claffey,
Yes.
since I did not attend the June 27th council meeting and it is the only item on the consent agenda, I'm going to abstain from the consent agenda vote.
Very, very good. Very good. Is someone willing to offer a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Kessinger, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Abstain.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, now we come to a public hearing of ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2025 budget ordinance for the city of Staunton by adding budget amendment number 1.
Ms. Moyer's our
She's already
CFO's
approaching us.
at the podium.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Evening.
This is our first budget amendment of 2025.
Made it 25 days, huh?
This is a budget amendment that totals $1,169,989, and it's primarily for the schools. As you know, when we passed the school budget, the state budget was not complete.
Right.
And so this was getting all that new revenue in place and adjusting their expenses. The amendment does require a public hearing, which was properly advertised on July 17th in the newsletter and will be conducted after my review of the amendment. Consideration of this amendment will be brought back to you for consideration August 8th, our next scheduled meeting. The city portion is for $100,700, and it includes a general fund appropriation of $46,953. And this is to fund a new comp board position in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that was included in the state budget that was passed since we adopted our budget. So this position is a fully funded comp board position, but as you may or may not know, that when they fully fund a comp board position, it does not cover all the benefits. So therefore, we agreed that we would remove the part-time position that the city funds in their office. And so this will be a zero cost for the city, and they'll be gaining a half of an FTE, taking that part-time to a full-time. Next is the grant fund appropriation of $58,721. These are 2 police department grants. The first one is $46,221 to appropriate the Bryan Justice Assistance Grant, and then $12,500 to appropriate the Department of State Police Help Eliminate Auto Theft Grant. The last item on the city side is an adjustment of a negative $4,974, and that is in our capital improvements fund, and that is just to remove the 2018 overage for the E911 grant to clean that up. So the biggest portion of this grant is schools at 1,069,289. The education fund appropriation is 913,413. The first part of the amendment adjusts the federal grants, increasing the preschool 619 funds by 10,779, increasing section 611 by 5,033, reducing Title I funds by 13,653, reduce Title II funds by 8,722, reduce Title IV funds by 37,654, increase Perkins funds by 71,628, reduce the all-in budget by 158,802. And the next 8 pages, you'll see that there are a lot of detail line items that were in the agenda packet. For 1,044,304, that was the increase in the state revenue that came after the budget was adopted. Schools have decided to add another 1% to their COLA, bringing the total up to a 4% COLA. And most of those lines are just adjusting the salary and benefit lines in their school budget for that 1% COLA. In addition, there's increases for insurance, some supplies, regional special ed expenditures, and their surplus right now is set aside in a non-department location for about $554,000. The last remaining item on the education fund is an appropriation of a $500 donation for books. Next is the state operated programs appropriation for $20,432. This entire amount relates to the 1% COLA for the SOP programs at the CCCA and the detention center. Then we have a school capital improvement appropriation of $127,385, and this is to appropriate the school safety and security grant. And then finally, the school cafeteria appropriation of $8,059. And that relates to the 1% COLA increase that they have in this budget amendment. That concludes my review of the amendment, and I can take questions, or if you don't have any questions, we can move to the public hearing.
Members of council? No questions. Counselor Campbell, you're good? I'm ready to proceed to the public hearing. Everybody ready? All right. I will now open up the public hearing as a time that we give for council to listen to citizens on the specific topic of the 2025 budget amendment number 1. We ask that when you come to the podium, please give your name, your address, and keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. For our Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak on this particular public hearing. When everyone has had a chance to speak, I will then close the public hearing. If you would like to speak on this public hearing on this budget amendment, please come to the podium at this time. Mr. Kesker, do we have anybody online?
No, sir. I have no one with their hand raised.
All right. Going once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. And we do not have a motion on this tonight. This is strictly for the public hearing. Very good. Public hearing and consideration of a request by Brandon Flood to vacate a portion of an alley lying between lot number 12 and lot 13A of Block 5 of the Selma Edition. Ms. Beauregard,
Tim Hartless will walk through this item this evening.
welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is a request by Brandon Flood to vacate a portion of an alley which runs between Hendren Avenue and Opie Street. This was alley and the surrounding properties were part of the Selma addition. The zoning is R2 low density residential, and the area is primarily developed as single family homes. The specific portion of the alley for which vacation has been requested lies between 202 Hendren Avenue and 212 Hendren Avenue. It's approximately 10 feet in width and 100 feet in length. During the staff review of this request, we did identify 2 areas of concern. First, the property number 2 Clem Lane does not have frontage on a public street. The alley is the only frontage. Typically, staff would like to see an entire alley vacated, not just a portion. because we want to avoid situations where we have a dead-end alley. But in this case, vacating the entire alley would result in 2 Clem Lane becoming landlocked. So that's why you're seeing this request to vacate only a portion rather than the entire alley. The other issue with dead-end alleys is this alley is only 10 feet wide. So if cars enter the alley, they also have to exit the same outlet onto Opie Street. And you have a situation possibly where 2 cars could meet head on. We also try to avoid that situation, but in this case, this alley doesn't appear like it has been used in a very long time. So staff did not think that either of these would be issues, and they're not significant enough to oppose the requested vacation. Planning Commission held a public hearing at its June 20th, 2024 meeting. No one spoke in opposition, and on a 5-0 vote, the commission unanimously voted to recommend approval. I should also note that staff did send out adjacent property notices to all properties on either side of the alley. We have not had any response to those letters, either in favor or against the vacation. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Was Clem Lane private or is it a city road?
Clem Lane is a private
Driveway.
street. It's basically a driveway. It's not a
Right.
public street.
That's what I thought.
And so 2 Clem Lane exits to the right of that?
To Virginia Avenue.
Oh,
And they have a driveway across
Wow.
for Clem Lane.
Yes.
I know exactly now.
All right. Well, any other questions of?
No, none of this, no.
All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. So if you wish to speak, please approach the podium. We will alternate between individuals physically present and those that have their hands raised via the Zoom platform. Again, this public hearing is for the alley vacation matter only. Public hearing is now open. Mr. Harless, the other thing I was going to say is Brandon Flood here, would he like to speak?
I don't see Mr. Flood here tonight. He did receive notification of the meeting, but I don't see him here in attendance.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Anyone online? Mr. Kessler?
No, sir, no one with their hand raised.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. I will now entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move the city council adopt the ordinance and approve the vacation as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Counselor Arrowood. Mr. Kessler?
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right. Next item is a public hearing and consideration of an amendment to Chapter 18.120 Yard Building Setback and Open Space Exceptions of Title 18 zoning of the Staunton City Code to increase the maximum fence height in residential districts when used for non-residential purposes. Mr. Harless.
Mr. Hartless again.
Thank you. This is an amendment to Chapter 18-120 of the City Code. That chapter includes the city's fence regulations. Our zoning code does regulate the height of fences in residential districts or in any other district when the property is used for residential purposes based upon the yard in which the fence is located. So in a front yard, it's a maximum height of 4 feet. And in a side or rear yard, it's a maximum height of 8 feet. Recently, the Staunton Augusta YMCA completed construction of its new facility at 575 New Hope Road. That is a pavilion, ball fields, children's recreation area, and it will be the location of their youth summer camp program. And the Y would like to install a fence in the front yard of that property, either 5 or 6 feet in height. And our current regulations don't allow for that. So they have proposed this amendment, and staff was supportive of the amendment, and we worked with them to draft the necessary language. So this amendment would amend Chapter 18-120, Section 0103, to allow an exception for non-residential uses that have been permitted by a special use permit so that they could have a fence up to 6 feet tall in the front yard. At its May meeting, the Planning Commission expressed some concerns with possible issues with sight lines at the entrance and exit there at the facility. To address those concerns, staff has proposed that we take the language from this same chapter, which requires a 15-foot right triangle at the intersection of 2 streets, and we apply that in this situation so that you have this 15-foot right triangle in which no fence could impede sight above the height of 4 feet. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this matter at its June 20th, 2024 meeting. No one spoke in opposition, and on a 5-0 vote, the commission unanimously recommended approval. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Questions?
If there are no visuals here, it's a big property. As I see Josh said, it's a big property. Is it going to go around the whole pavilion, play area? I'm just wondering how it would be blocking sight lines of cars.
So in this particular situation, it's a very wide property,
Mhm.
and the fence would be along the frontage along New Hope Road, where the entrance is to the property. And there was some concern that a 6-foot tall fence, there's also a curve there, and the 6-foot tall fence could impede sight
Right.
if someone were trying to turn out on the Spring Hill Road. But by having this triangle, the fence would have to angle back towards the parking lot, and it would create this open space where someone could see through.
Got it. Thank you. And I can kind of see it in my mind now. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Counselor Campbell, you all right? All right. Well, we need to have a public hearing on this as well. So I will now open the public hearing. So if you wish to speak, please approach the podium. We will alternate between individuals speaking and those with their hands raised. This public hearing is for the open space exceptions for the Staunton City Code. Public hearing is now open. Welcome.
Thank you. Josh Cole from the Staunton Augusta YMCA, 1016 Ridgemont Drive. I just wanted to thank you. I want to thank the staff involved with helping us with this text amendment. We appreciate their efforts, and we hope this does good things. So,
And when will the facility be open?
we're actually running it right now. We're put a temporary kind of fence in there so that we could get kids out there right now. But we're hoping to put in a more permanent fence with this amendment. So,
Good.
yeah,
Congratulations on the project.
thank you.
Yeah, it's
A
nice.
lot of work.
Very nice looking. Mr. Kesker, anybody?
No, sir, we have no hands raised.
Anyone else like to speak on this? Public hearing is now closed. I will entertain a motion.
Mayor Claffey, I move the city council adopt the ordinance and approve the amendment as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Edwards. Mr. Kesker?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Good. And next on the agenda is a consideration of a resolution authorizing the adoption of the fiscal year 2024 through 2028 5-year consolidated plan, fiscal year 2024 annual action plan, and a substantial amendment to the fiscal year 2020 annual action plan for the city of Staunton, and entitlement community through the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development's Community Development Block Grant Program. That's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful. Miss Joyce is joining us again to walk through this item this evening.
Welcome.
Thank you for the mouthful. Every day is like that for me sometimes. This is the fifth year that the city has been in the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program. Every year, we're required to submit an annual action plan, and every 5 years, we have to submit a consolidated plan. This is the second consolidated plan that the city has submitted. You all have received the both plans in your packet. We've also had it on the website and have had a public comment period for the last month, which ended yesterday. We've been working on this plan since January with our consultants, M&L. We had a series of stakeholder meetings back in March on the 7th and 11th and on April 30th. That was one of my favorite things with the planning process. We actually worked with the city of Waynesboro and Capsol, who also had community development block grant plans due. And so we had a combined stakeholder sessions at the Bright Transit Facility, which was nice for all of the attendees. They were able to make comments for all the different plans in one meeting. So they appreciated that. We also had a public needs meeting on April 1st at the Montgomery Hall Park building, and we also had a public hearing on July 10th. As a result of that, we came up with three goals for the plan for the next 5 years. And those are to provide decent housing by preserving the affordable housing stock, increasing the availability of affordable housing stock, reducing discriminatory barriers, increasing the supply of supportive housing for those with special needs, and transitioning homeless persons and families into housing. The second goal was to provide a suitable living environment through safer, more livable neighborhoods, greater integration of low and moderate income residents throughout the city, increased housing opportunities, and reinvestment in deteriorating neighborhoods. The third goal, to expand economic opportunities through more jobs, paying self-sufficient wages, homeownership opportunities, development activities that promote long-term community viability, and the empowerment of low and moderate income persons to achieve self-sufficiency. These goals were very similar to the ones in the last 5-year plan, but a lot of the input that we got pointed us in that same direction. We are also, besides the 5-year plan, you all are approving the annual action plan tonight. And just to give you a summary, I'm not going to go over all of the individual projects, but if you all would like that, I can. Basically, this coming year, the allocation that we're hoping to receive is $328,268. Of that money, 15% will be used for public services, which is about $49,240.20. 20% will be for administration, which is $65,653.60. I'd like to be precise. And then 65% will go towards projects, and that's $213,374.20. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer those. If we would love it if you all be willing to pass a resolution to accept the plan.
Questions from counselors?
Okay. I did have a question about the blight removal portion on this. It says blight removal spot basis project on that. It's not a heavily funded item, but does that involve blighted properties within the city?
That's a good question. That is not very much funding, and at this point, we're not even sure if it's enough to handle a property. But we wanted to start putting some money towards looking at that. One of the issues we're having in the city with housing is we don't always have available land or housing that's in good enough condition. So we've put that in there as kind of a starting point for a fund to do that.
It would be good to see that in a lot of
Yes.
neighborhoods that different organizations
Yes.
have built in. There's a couple houses that are
Yes.
skunk environments,
Right.
things like that are owned by 17 grandchildren that hate each other.
Exactly, yes.
So it would be good to move
And
forward.
that's the word spot. That's why it's that. We don't have any
Okay.
neighborhood we're specifically looking at. We're working closely with the building side of the community development. They are very aware of which properties
Mhm.
fit those.
Good to see it as a start.
Yes,
Of that.
yes.
Very good, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Joyce, can you tell me about the A Street Aging in Place project? Is this the same project we were talking about last year? On
Yes.
the right up
Yes.
by the golf course?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The reason that's in there, and that's also has to do with that substantial amendment, we are actually swapping out funds from the older money so that we can get that spent and pushing that 60,000 ahead to be able to help Habitat. They've been going through some administrative changes lately, so we just wanted to kind of hold that funding. Instead, the 60,000 will be from the old money. We're going to be giving that to the Staunton Redevelopment and Housing Authority for replacing their HVAC units. They have survived since the 80s, so.
But that is a project that is going to be moving ahead. I looked at their website today and it looks
Yes,
no different than it did
We
last
had a
year.
meeting earlier this week, and I will be meeting with them and some other organizations tomorrow. I think they're trying to decide where they're going with the organization. So
So is that actually a good place to put that money is my question.
that's a good question. The nice thing is that if that falls through, we're able to easily move it to something else, and we'll be coming here with another substantial amendment. So
So voting on this evening would not be necessarily committing it to.
no.
Has been removed from it.
Got it.
Yes, you're committing to it for the moment, but it can change. The programs within it, and that's why we would have a substantial amendment, and we'd let you know.
All right. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes,
Thank
no,
you very much, Ms.
Sure,
Joyce.
sure.
Counselor Campbell?
Yeah, Ms. Joyce, just in that same line of questioning. So when there's program changes, are we updating both the annual action plan and the consolidated plan? Or is it really just the action plan, which is what is the driver of what we're trying to accomplish?
I think it will be just the annual action plan. I don't know that I've seen in the past we've ever added amendments to the consolidated plan. The funding in the budget usually comes through that annual action plan. So that's what would be amended.
Okay, just to follow up on that, the consolidated plan, it's got a lot of information in it. I'm still working my way through all of it. A lot of the data sources though are 2013, 2017. With this regional study that we're getting ready to conclude, is there potentially some opportunities there to maybe look at? I don't know if we want to wait 5 years, but if there's some opportunities to update some of this data, just given the age of it.
Yes, we can look at doing that. Mainly this plan is an administrative plan and requirement for HUD, but we certainly could look at if we wanted to update it through this planning process or just have that information available through the block grant process to our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions from council? Appreciate that report. All right, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that City Council approve the resolution authorizing the adoption of the FY 2024-2028 Consolidated Plan and FY 2024 Annual Action Plan, the substantial amendment to the FY 2020 Annual Action Plan, and authorize the city manager to execute the subrecipient agreements and associated documents with agencies recommended to receive HUD CDBG funds.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Counselor Edwards. Mr. Kessinger.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Joyce, for everything.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a consideration of resolution approving the city's participation in the opioid settlement with Kroger.
Mr. Blair, our city attorney, will walk through this evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Tonight before you is a resolution to approve the city's participation in a settlement with Kroger. You may recall in November of 2021, the city first entered into an settlement agreement with an opioid manufacturer and 3 distributors. This occurred through the Office of the Attorney General of Virginia. Then in March of 2023, as additional entities decided to settle with the various state attorney general's offices related to the opioid epidemic, we had a number of pharmacies, including CVS and Walgreens, agree to enter into multi-state settlements. Tonight before you, Kroger has agreed to enter into a $1.4 billion settlement with, I believe it's approximately 35 states. Virginia's proposed share would be $28 million from this. Just to give you a very brief description of what the suit was about, the allegations were that Kroger did not employ proper monitoring of prescriptions that allowed excessive amounts of opioid prescriptions to be distributed when they should perhaps otherwise should not have been. As part of this settlement, Kroger does not admit to any wrongdoing. However, they are offering $1.2 billion or $1.4 billion to settle all claims. Again, this settlement is through the Office of the Attorney General. Localities are required, if they wish to participate in this, by August the 12th of this year. Happy to take any questions.
You have any idea what Stanton's portion would be?
Do not right now.
Depends
I
on
think
how many.
it'll
many
depend
do it.
on how many localities join the suit, join the settlement, not the suit.
But there's only 28 million in the entire state of.
Yes. Yes, I was wondering about that too, but if you go look online, I mean, clearly most of Kroger's stores are in the Midwest, and other parts of the nation. Virginia does not have quite as many Krogers as, say, states out in the Midwest. So I think it's probably a product of where the actual prescriptions were distributed and the amount of the prescriptions.
Any questions?
Is there any reason we would not do this?
No, I mean, again, I think we have elected to participate in the other settlements. Otherwise, you can choose not to participate in this. But what that effectively does is the city itself would then, if it wished to recover any funds for opioid abatement recovery from Kroger, we'd have to bring our own suit.
So ask the city attorney if he would like to do
Yeah,
that.
do you want to sue Kroger?
John, you've got some free time on your hands, right?
Well, I don't know that I'd want to sue Kroger, but I'd like to see justice done
Yeah.
for those that
Yes.
perhaps
I agree. I
well
think this
the
is right.
victim.
Very well said.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. No public hearing with this. I'm ready to accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move,
Councilors.
thank you, sir. I move that City Council approve the resolution approving the city's participation in the proposed settlement of opioid-related claims against Kroger.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Mayor Claffey, I'll second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Darby. Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, John. All right, that brings us to item G, which is a consideration of Stanton Crossing final plat and of resolution authorizing Virginia Department of Transportation inventory adjustment. Ms. Beauregard,
Lyle Hart, city engineer, will present this item.
welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. Well, as you all very well know, VDOT contributed the majority of funds for and administered the construction of approximately 3/4 of a mile of new road to connect the existing Crossing Way and Valley Center Drive street sections out in Staunton Crossing. Construction was completed this summer and has been inspected and approved by VDOT and the city. The city wishes to accept these improvements, and further action is needed to record the final plat dedicating the public street right-of-way. And also, we would like to add this newly constructed street to the city's urban maintenance inventory register with VDOT. And that's required in order to receive the reimbursement from VDOT for the maintenance of such qualifying highways. So for the final plat, you guys have a copy of that, and it's entitled Plat of Subdivision and Lot Line Adjustment, Staunton Crossing. It's done by TRC Engineers Incorporated. It establishes the right-of-way for the newly constructed road, effectively carving it out of the existing 4 parcels owned by the Economic Development Authority. Now, this carving of the right-of-way through there, it's approximately 15 acres, and it accommodates the new street and roundabout, proposed entrances, a park and ride lot, a 10-foot wide shared use path that's paved, and then also the necessary stormwater facilities that are part of that project. It extends Crossing Way from its existing terminus, coming from Richmond Avenue, to just south of the new roundabout at Staunton Crossing. And then coming from the other direction from the north, it effectively extends Valley Center Drive from its existing terminus up to and including the new roundabout. Additionally, the plat adjusts the lot line between the proposed lots A and B as requested by the EDA. This lot line revision, it's being included as part of the final plat in order to avoid necessitating a subsequent minor subdivision plat to do the same thing. Kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone here. The final plat is in general conformance with the requirements of the zoning and subdivision ordinances and has been approved and signed by the Economic Development Authority. And at last week's meeting, the Planning Commission considered the request for the plat. On a 3-0 vote, the commission voted to recommend approval of the plat, pending that staff ensure that the surveyor resolve any technicalities prior to presentation to City Council, and they have done so, and the most updated version of the plat is before you. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Does this mean we get to open the road?
Once the plat's signed and recorded, yes, sir.
Go drive around.
So we have
Wanna
to
go
wait
out there and-
till it gets recorded. How long does that take?
Usually not too long.
So we're not gonna be allowed to call it the road to nowhere anymore because it's now going somewhere. So excellent. We are very grateful for all your work in getting this done, and we are excited to make this final step.
Yeah.
Since we did cut the ribbon on it two months ago, so we're ready to go. So, anyone have any questions of Lyle?
No, happy to see it here.
Yes, good job. Therefore, I assume that we need 2 separate motions here.
Yes.
All right, let's start with the first one. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Claffey, I move that council approve the final plat for Staunton Crossing as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Second, Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Part number 2.
Go ahead.
Mayor Claffey, I move that City Council adopt the proposed resolution authorizing the Virginia Department of Transportation to add those portions of Crossing Way and Valley Center Drive as shown on Exhibits A and B of the resolution to the city's local system of roads.
Motion's been made. Second.
A second.
Second by Counselor Arrowood. Mr. Kesker.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for all your
Thank you,
work on it.
Lyle. Very nice
It's a
work.
long time coming. That brings us to matters from the city manager.
Thank you, Mary Claffey. I have a few items this evening. On July 29th, 30th, and 31st, VDOT will be implementing the closure of northbound traffic on Interstate 81 just south of the city near mile marker 220. And there will also be a slow roll closure of southbound traffic. So this will occur between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. And they're going to attempt to detour all traffic around the city utilizing Route 262. The city is going to post reminders about this on social media, and we're sure local news will cover this as well. So y'all avoid that area if you can, possibly. It's going to be kind of crazy early next week. Staunton Citizen University is back after a long hiatus beginning in September. The last session was in 2019 before the pandemic, and staff is excited to bring it back. The schedule has been finalized, and our communications team will be working closely with department heads and supervisors to make each class as engaging and robust as possible. The program will run Tuesday evenings for 10 weeks and kick off with a virtual orientation after Labor Day. Applications will open on the city's website at 8 a.m. on August 25th for 25 slots. And in the past, these slots have filled up quickly. There will be information forthcoming with links to apply. These will be posted on the city's social media pages and through the city's website. So be on the lookout for that towards the end of August. I'm sorry, the beginning of August. Just a quick reminder, although we're in a respite from the heat we've had, social services is still accepting applications for cooling assistance through August 15th. And just to remind everybody, all approved households will receive the maximum benefit allotment for electricity payments, which is $600 this year. This program also helps with repairs to cooling systems, purchase of an air conditioner for households without any air conditioning, and security deposits. So if you're seeking cooling assistance, please reach out to Shenandoah Valley Social Services before August 15th. The Bright Transit Advisory Committee met on July 10th, and modifications were approved to the Staunton North and West loops of the downtown trolley to accommodate an additional transit stop on Middlebrook Avenue. This new transit stop, located near the intersection of Middlebrook Avenue and Moore Street, is expected to be operational in a couple of months and will help serve the residents of the new multifamily developments in the area. Yay, that's right. That's great news.
Yeah.
And finally, recently, the Garden Club of Virginia let us know that the Environmental Programs Division, also known as Stormwater, of the city of Staunton was selected as the recipients of the newly established Helen and Taylor Murphy Conservation Leadership in Government Award. This award recognizes the work of individuals, departments, and other government officials for their work in conservation efforts. The Augusta Garden Club submitted a nomination outlining the department's work on the Gypsy Hill Park Stream Restoration Project, which I know all of you have seen, which is going along nicely. And the committee was thrilled to learn of the city's steps to help restore and daylight the stream. As the winners of the award, staff are invited to the Garden Club of Virginia's Conservation Forum on November 7th in Martinsville, Virginia at the New College Institute. And that is all I have this evening.
That's wonderful news.
Isn't that great
That's
news?
Yeah, that's
We
nice.
got to make a big deal about that.
I
which we
think
will
so.
do.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you very much. That's good. All right. And that brings us to the last item on the agenda, which is matters from the public. This is a time that city council listens to the citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. If you would like to speak, please come to the podium, begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. I now open the floor for matters from the public. Welcome.
Thank you. It's Jeff Overholtzer, 309 Rainbow Drive in Staunton. I just wanted to commend council for its efforts to address the threat of extreme weather to the city, but ask you to do more. We've heard several points addressed tonight on this topic. We've reached new temperature records every year, both locally and globally, and this causes extreme weather. In the last 4 years, Staunton has already suffered millions of dollars in damage and harm to human health from flooding, heat, smoke, and high winds, as the mayor referenced earlier. We've declared a drought 2 years in a row, and the evidence suggests that this will get worse. So the question before us is, what mitigation can we do now to lessen the suffering later? It's the old question of pay me now or pay me later. And if we address it now, the suffering can be less. So the city, I want to just acknowledge the action that we're already taking, and but just ask that we do more. And some common sense incremental actions, both short-term and long-term, will mitigate the danger and reduce the suffering. So for instance, we should continue the stream restoration work in Gypsy Hill and consider other locations that could benefit. This work is win-win-win. It beautifies the area, it reduces runoff and flooding, and improves water quality. We can assess shade coverage, sometimes it's called a canopy, in the city, and work with volunteers and nonprofits to plant trees where needed, including bus stops. We can identify large paved areas in the city, starting with city-owned property, and look for opportunities to use pavers and plantings to absorb water and reduce runoff. And for new plantings of trees, shrubs, and flowers, we should prioritize native and drought-resistant species. It's great that we're now using Lewis Creek water to water the plants instead of city tap water, but we should reduce the need for water overall. And the Lewis Creek Advisory Committee is doing great work and has other ideas. So overall, mitigation of extreme weather should be thoroughly addressed in the comprehensive plan, which is, I know, is being revised now with action steps and timelines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kester, is anyone on the line?
No, sir, I have no one with their hands raised.
Welcome.
Cindy Connors, 106A Skyline Avenue. I'm here to just talk a little bit about the Arcadia project. We all know that Pam and Tom are leading that charge, but we've started opening the theater for tours every weekend. Now, it's going to be a little hit or miss what time, but tomorrow it will be open from 5 to 6:30. So anybody can come in and see the progress. It's so exciting because all the demo is done. And so you can really start to see now the potential of the project. And you might even get a sneak peek into the building of the maze for the Magic Festival in September. So come on down and see us from 5 to 6:30, but you can also watch the Facebook page and the website for other times we'll be open. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Kester,
No, sir, I have no hands raised.
would anyone else like to speak under matters from the public? In which case I shall adjourn the meeting and wish everyone a delightful August. July is about done.